a work meeting with somebody who both of us know that if we have a work meeting over lunch, we're going to have to schedule another work meeting within a week to also have lunch, but then actually talk about some work stuff.
Yeah, you give them the information, but ultimately they make the decision. And if they want to make a decision that is not optimal, that's their right. Watching people do something, though, that is not the optimal thing, especially when it's something that you know very well, is painful. So I
Oh yeah.
understand why somebody would not necessarily want to put themselves through that. Because it's like, but I gave you all the information and there's a right answer and you have chosen something else and that does not make sense. That's not how it goes. That's not what happens.
People are allowed to be wrong.
People are allowed to be wrong. That's a tough lesson.
Well, what do you think? Should we make a podcast?
Let's make a podcast.
Hello, and welcome into Gifted Kid Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast, the show where potential went to die. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I am your host, Jessica Michaels, and I use she, they.
And today we are talking about misophonia. Sorry, misophonia. We're talking about misophonia and why it is the worst. Jess, what's misophonia?
So, misophonia is a condition where certain sounds, often human-made sounds like mouth sounds, or sounds like the clicking of a pen or other repetitive sounds, are things that you're particularly sensitive to. So it is a sensory processing disorder. And often the feeling that is evoked by these sounds is anger or rage or really high anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I
And
take
if
it
you
from that.
can't tell, if you can't tell, Ellie has experienced misophonia before.
Mm-hmm. You mean not everyone wants to rip off theirs and everyone else's skin because someone is chewing too close to them?
No, apparently, there is not a lot of great science around misophonia, but what we do know is that there have been studies that have shown that there is extra activity in the amygdala when people with misophonia have, exposure to these sounds, and that it triggers their fight or flight uh, response. And the thing that I heard as I was researching, the phrase that I saw and heard most often is, it makes me want to punch someone in the face. This
Yep.
was said by many people across many generations, across different nationalities. That is the common response to these is, I want to punch someone in the face.
Yep.
So that is
Yep.
accurate to
Yep.
your experience.
Yeah. Yeah, about 1,000% there. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like, and again, these studies are not, we don't have a ton of information. It is estimated anywhere between 3 and maybe 18% of the population could have misophonia. It's not directly tied to autism or ADHD, but it is a sensory processing disorder. So a lot of neurodivergent people also have sensory processing disorders. So this could, fall into that group. It's also associated with conditions like OCD. So we still have a lot to learn. It isn't right now a recognized condition outside of these experiences. And treatment is, there are couple different things that people can try, often CBT, but really right now there isn't a lot out there to say, here's what it is, here's why it happens, and here's how you fix it. But part of getting there is talking about it and figuring out how people experience it.
Yeah. Um, certain sounds hurt my brain, and they hurt my brain in such a way that it directly taps into my anger center of my brain or whatever. Um, it's involuntary. It's usually quite spontaneous. It's annoying, both to the person that it's happening to and anyone who's around them. Um, because I would like to claw my face off because something in this car is rattling and I don't know what and I don't know where, but every time we go over an itty bitty bump, that rattling noise happens and I need it to stop. Or, like I said before, I'm going to rip my skin off.
Mhm.
Um, or someone is sitting next to you and eating something and they have a bit of a cold, so they're making lots of mouth noises and breathing while they eat. And strangely enough, you want to punch them in the face, not for any particularly sane reason or for any reason at all. It's just the impulse. You want to make it stop however you can. Um, and it comes and goes these days. I'm more susceptible to it if I'm, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, all of those. If I'm already in some level of distress. But so far, the only thing that's really made it better or reduce how much it impacts my mood and my mind has been going on hormones, where just everything sucks less now. So that's cool. Um,
Mhm.
but it'll still come roaring back if I'm really tired or if I'm already upset.
Mhm. And it looks like the average age of onset is about 12 years old. Is that about when you started to experience it, or was yours different?
I don't know. The historical records from that time are spotty at best, but I know it definitely became more of a thing like through my mid to late 20s. It definitely became a thing. Um, it just became something I couldn't ignore anymore. I had to do something about it other than punch somebody in the face.
That is very rarely a solution that you can implement.
We are not medical professionals. However, you heard it here first on Gifted Kid Messy Adult. Don't punch people in the face,
No, no.
except Nazis.
Now
Oh God.
you have, now leave it in. Now you have very sensitive hearing overall, which isn't necessarily part of misophonia, but for you, it really is. Can you talk about some of the things that you hear that you have learned that not everybody hears?
Yeah. Uh, so we're old. This has been established. We grew up in the late 1900s. And at the time, televisions, which was like a big computer monitor that sat in the living room, they were CRTs, which stands for cathode ray tube. The big boxy monitors and TVs that had the huge thing on the back where the cathode ray tube was. Those make a noise and they make a high-pitched squealing noise. And I could hear it from the sidewalk in front of somebody's house. Um, I can hear when the dishwasher is running from across the apartment. Um, the charger bricks that you use sometimes have something called coil whine, which is a whining noise that's made by the current step up or step down that a coil is making. It's basically the wires kind of vibrating against each other. And all chargers make a noise. And I found quite often I can hear when a phone is done charging because the charger brick makes a slightly different noise when it's not pulling as much current through it. Um, I can hear a rattling in a car that could be like a single dime somewhere in the back seat on the floor. Uh, Electronics really are an issue, which is weird because I spend all of my time a lot around electronics. Um, there's a vent hood exhaust on the ceiling or on the roof above me right now, and it's a windy day, so it's wobbling in the wind, and I can hear that as if it's someone standing next to me hitting my desk with a hammer. I mean, those are the ones that jump to the top of my head. What did I forget? What do you know about?
Well, I remember when we got together, you had mentioned that you had some hearing sensitivities. And I mean, the first one we figured out right away was chewing and eating. And so there were times when you very nicely just asked if I could move to another room to finish whatever I was eating. It wasn't as bad when we went to restaurants, but when it was just the two of us, then that became difficult sometimes. Or you would put another earbud in sometimes to try to, I think, block it out when you didn't want to ask your new girlfriend to relocate. Um,
Hmm.
but I didn't. I think the time that I started to realize how acute your hearing was when I had just had gallbladder surgery and I couldn't laugh because of my, during my recovery. And we were in the car and you said something funny and I apologized. You said, I can't laugh, but that was really funny. And you said, "Oh, but I could hear you smile." And so over the course of the years, there have been many times when you've said from across the room, "I can hear you smile," or "I heard that smile," and it is impressive every single time. Um,
Hmm.
the other time I remember distinctly was uh, laying down at the end of the night and you heard a noise and we couldn't figure out what it was. And then finally you said, just blink a couple times. And I blinked. And you're like, ah, that's it. Okay. And at least in that instance, it was better once you could identify it. Sounds that you can't identify sometimes really, really irk you, I think, and
Hmm.
cause you anxiety. And sometimes just knowing what the sound is can make it better, but not always. Nothing is going to make you feel better about chewing. Nothing.
Nope.
No.
And for the record, the reason I could hear you smile is because there's an itty bitty popping noise when you go from pressing your lips together to opening them. And when you smile, the corners of your mouth separate. And so it makes a
Hmm.
little, the mic's not even going to pick that up.
No,
It makes
no.
it almost like a wet click. Like,
I know what it is now. I mean, the side effect to me of all of these things is that I have started to notice, I mean, the ones that are within the range of my hearing is now I know what click you're talking about because I have heard it. And now I'm almost hypersensitive about things like sounds in the car or other sounds that I can hear that I think will bother you. So there's been times when you aren't bothered by something and I'm freaked out by it because it just has struck my brain as something that could bother Ellie. And so, I've picked up some of that anxiety. But part of that is because your misophonia has actually gotten a lot better in the past few years. And you mentioned that started when you went on hormones. Is that right?
mhm.
Do you think that had to do with your stress and your anxiety lessening when you weren't going through as much dysphoria?
Absolutely. It's really difficult to explain to cis people what it's like to have the wrong endocrine system. Um, because it's not one specific thing, but imagine like the sound and the feeling of a swarm of bees and a chainsaw in your head at all times. And just this feeling of vague misery and confusion and a nagging sense that something's wrong and you should probably try and get away from it 24/7 for your entire life. And almost no one you talk to has any idea what you're talking about. And they consider it to be bipolar, or they think it's just depression, or it's some kind of weird tinnitus. And it's just this visceral feeling of nonstop stress. And sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. And a lot of it you just don't know why or what. So, switching my hormones around, getting the testosterone suppressed and getting the estrogen up makes that go away. It just goes away. It just stops. Like you've had, an open wound on your arm since you were 6, and then all of a sudden it heals and stops hurting. So, I am in general not on edge constantly. You know, I'd say for a lot of my adult life, I felt like a smoker who really needed a cigarette but hadn't been able to get one for like 20 straight years. And so just overall stress levels are down so far that then a slightly annoying noise isn't going to put me over the edge. And I have the extra capacity and mental space to just ignore it because it's just a sound. Who cares?
Hmm. There are definitely reports of people who had their symptoms lessen when they were able to eliminate a great source of stress or anxiety, or they're people whose symptoms have been worse when they're going through a grieving process. So it seems like
Hmm.
it definitely is related to whatever stress you're experiencing in your life, other than being on the hormones and kind of, which obviously wasn't the goal wasn't to eliminate your misophonia when you went on hormones. Did you ever try any treatment or any techniques to lessen your misophonia while you were struggling with it, or did it just work itself out in that one instance?
Oh, absolutely. I tried everything. I tried wearing, 2 earbuds and having something playing all the time. I tried noise canceling earplugs. I tried the I tried the thing that every professional tells you not to try and do, which is to try and kill your ability to hear certain frequencies. Um, I think that was actually your sister who very loudly insisted that that was a bad idea. Um,
My sister, the speech language pathologist. Yes, she's very upset when people will do anything to damage their speech or their hearing. Rightly so. What were you doing to try to damage your hearing?
it was in the concept phase. I didn't really have a plan and didn't really follow through with it. It was just like, hey, I wonder if this would help. Because that's how desperate you end up. Nothing helps. And it's
Mm-hmm.
impacting your ability to exist. You
Mm-hmm.
can't take the bus because the sound that the wheels make is infuriating. Um, Daily meditation practice helped. Antidepressants and mood stabilizers helped. Um, eliminating other stressors helped, but nothing ever just made it go away. And it's even worse with the super acute hearing that I have, where they had for a minute there that like stores would play like a high pitched sound that only the youth could hear to like keep teenagers away from their store. And it's like, oh, you stop being able to hear this by the time you're 20. And I'm like, I'm in my late mid 30s and I can still hear that from 100 yards.
Yeah, people that when I was researching, people talked about not being able to go to the movies because they could hear people eating popcorn, or not being able to celebrate holidays with the family because they couldn't be in a room, with everybody eating all at once. And so you think about this sensitivity and you think about, this rage, I guess, but I hadn't thought about all of the things that you could potentially miss, the experiences that you don't get to take part in because of your hearing. And that just seems so awful.
Hmm. No, restaurants can be awful. Movie theaters, yeah, you mentioned that is so bad. Chewing popcorn is really, really loud. And it's oftentimes hot and then has hot butter on it. And people tend to chew it with their mouths a bit more open because they're sitting in a dark room. There's straws moving in cups making their noise. Um, and then people talking, 6 rows back and 3 seats to the left. And then people talking 4 rows forward and six seats to the right. And you're trying to block out all of this and pay attention to a movie, and it's just torture.
So, what about things like noise canceling headphones? Have they been helpful?
Yes and no. So there's two kinds of noise canceling headphones. There's active and there's passive. And passive just kind of to make a low level hum kind of noise that it's just supposed to drown out the air around you and the noise around you. Active noise canceling headphones have a microphone built into them and a really fast processor. So when it detects a noise, it plays an inverse noise into your headphones that will cancel out the external noise. And the problem is, unless you have really nice, high quality noise canceling headphones, I can hear it. I can hear the noise that the headphones are making. I can hear the noise of the processor running to hear those noises and cancel them out. And I can hear the change in the ambient noise based on that little bit of lag and that little bit of noise that the headphones are making. So I tried several noise canceling headphones and earbuds, and it wasn't until we got like wildly fancy, top of the line, Sony X line, whatever, blah, 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 blahs, that it actually worked. And even then, over time, the internal battery will degrade and you'll start to get something similar to coil whine. And they are no longer useful. They are, in fact, a detriment.
It's just sounds so exhausting. You know, the other thing I think that people don't think about is the toll that misophonia can take on your relationships.
Hmm.
I remember, I know, I always joke that you've got such sensitive hearing and you managed to marry the loudest human being on the face of the planet. Just being dyspraxic and autistic, I really have a hard time modulating the volume of my voice. Um, but also, I am not a delicate flower in any sense. I'm loud. I Everything I do is loud. You will never lose me in a public place at all. You will always hear me coming. I never sneak up on anybody. And so I like to think I was fairly understanding when we had to sit in different rooms to eat or whatever. If I was, drinking too loud or I stopped buying apples at a certain point. But
So
I think
loud.
I think that I know there were people who don't have that understanding, and maybe we do because we're neurodivergent just in general. But I could imagine that that could really be a detriment to a partnership at some point.
Hmm. Oh my God, yes. Um, it was even hard, back when we did the stand-up comedies and we told the funny jokes. A lot of those venues are not super professional, and the people who set up the AV stuff don't always know exactly what they're doing. And you're standing next to a bunch of audio equipment that runs on a lot of power and is just a great big speaker in a box. And sometimes they give off a horrendous, mind-numbingly distracting noise that I just have to try and not hear so I can remember how to be funny and sociable. Um, so it's not like the traditional awkward person gets up to use a mic and you get the, feedback immediately with the like no, it's just a low level hum or buzz or intermittent clicking that just drives straight into your skull.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. In fact, I actually want to wrap this episode up pretty quickly because I can tell you're getting very anxious. And so I don't want this to carry over into the rest of your day. But some of the particular sounds that were called out by a large portion of the mesophonic population were pen clicking, chewing,
Ugh.
sniffling,
Uh-huh.
breathing,
Uh-huh.
sneezing,
Mm.
Rattling, like from when you are like fidgeting, so rattling of a chair. Those were things that were called out very commonly as being rage inducing.
Hmm.
Yeah. What advice do you have for a partner or a family member of somebody who is misophonic? How could they support someone who has this going on in their brain?
Believe them. Believe them and don't blame them. Because if I could just stop being bothered by it, I would have done that 20 years ago.
Hmm.
We don't want to be doing this. We don't want this to be a part of our lives, but it is. And so sometimes that means we can't sit with you at the dinner table. And don't take that personally. We're we're doing that so that we don't punch you in the face. We are doing that for your good and for our good. And I think it's more important that we don't feel tortured or don't feel the urge to punch our loved ones in the face than it is that we sit down at everybody for Thanksgiving dinner. We would love to. It would be amazing. It would be so much simpler and so much less effort, but we
Mhm.
can't. So please just try to be patient with us and know that we're not angry at you. There's a noise that is making the person angry, and it's not personal, it's biological. That's it.
I love you.
I love you too. Wow, I am clenching my hands together
I know
really hard.
we really need to be done. We definitely need to be all done. But yes, but thank you so much for sharing this. I know that this is very stressful for you to talk about, so I appreciate you sharing and hopefully providing some understanding to people out there who may have misophonia, but again, partners and loved ones who don't understand maybe why they can't chew gum around a certain member of their family. So hopefully you've given some relief to some folks out there.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's not personal. I love you dearly, but the noise makes me want to punch a baby.
We also don't punch babies, just to
Oh
throw
yeah,
that
no,
out there.
don't punch babies.
Don't punch babies.
Well, on that note, I think it'll just about wrap it up for this episode of Gifted Kid Messy Adult. Jess, where can people find out more about you?
People can find me at coachjessicamichaels.com and they can find out about having a free coaching session with me or having me come speak at their organization.
And if you like our show, please rate and review us. And for any other information, please email us your questions, comments, or just your outright praise to giftedkidmessyadult@gmail.com. And until next time, take care of each other out there.
Bye.
I need to go sit in a quiet room. Oh,
Yep.
I'm in a closet covered in foam. Here we go.
Good. Good. That works. It's the only acceptable way for you to be back in the closet. Bye.